I think actually what we need to have is a source of truth. Let's say you write an academic paper. You upload that paper into a repository, you sign it with a digital signature, and it gets logged on a blockchain. And now you have an immutable copy of that. And when you make changes next time, just like now, scientists and researchers, they submit for peer review and then they get put into a system, but then those papers get copied and put all over the internet and they get indexed. And now you can't really verify that's true. I think we need to build that truth base through non-AI means, but through like hashing, digital signatures and stuff like that.
Hey, this is Ryan Connell with the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office, joined today with Nathan Manzotti. Nate, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Hey, good. Appreciate you being on today.
So, hey, everybody. I'm Nathan Manzotti. My government title is I'm the Managing Director of the Data Analytics and the AI Centers of Excellence at Technology Transformation Services at GSA. And I'm also one of two co-managers for the government-wide artificial intelligence community of practice, which is an exciting program that the COE runs. And the other co-manager is Ryan Dolan. So those are the three programs, my AOR right now at work.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Have you been involved with AI like your whole career? Is it relatively new for you? What does that look like?
I got involved with AI around about 2016, something like that, 2015, 2016. My first exposure to AI was outside of work, really. It was when, in that time, Google open sourced their Inception version 2 model, which was an image classifier. And I just thought it was so cool that you had pre-trained model, you identify another set of images and just fine-tune the model on that, because I was never exposed to anything like that before. And I just thought like, wow, they made open source TensorFlow, they're putting out these pre-trained models. And so that led me down the rabbit hole of learning about how to actually implement AI systems and play around with them. And then another thing, the same time frame, that's when the cloud machine learning services started to come online. And so I actually built an application called Real Fake News, 2016, using natural language processing services from, Google Cloud. And that was kind of cool. It was anywhere near even like the GPT-3 quality generation. But what it would do is it would go out and scrape the internet for like the day's news headlines and then read those articles and then generate a fake one that's like, some BS, but it's goes along with the daily news.
Okay.
And so that was cool. And that kind of turned it on for me when I realized like, all right, this is the future. This is really cool. I want to be involved in this. And then I learned a lot about machine learning, traditional machine learning and stuff outside of work. And then when I got to Walter Reed in 2017, I started working on some kind of like advanced analytics stuff for estimating, how many patient visits we'd have and doing kind of more predictive modeling as well. And I was working with the NICO informatics team, they called it, where we had like half the house was research side, the other half was production analytics. And I was on the production analytics side, but I had a lot of exposure to what they were doing on the research side and trying to put some of that stuff into production. That was kind of like predictive AI systems, machine learning classifiers and stuff like that.
You've been at this a while then. The fake news thing is hilarious. I mean, so let's just like pull that thread a little bit. Right. I mean, I think the fake news, the fake videos that are coming out. I mean, obviously the technology has progressed exponentially since you were, scouring the internet for news articles. What's your take on where we are with AI and potentially like fake news and deepfakes and all that stuff? And are there solutions to combat?
Well, so interestingly, coming full circle, right now, and this is not an official GSA thing. Now I'm talking my personal capacity. Okay. But I just built an application a month ago, something like that, to fact check news, right? So understanding because like you mentioned, the technology has evolved thousandfold since 10 years ago. And now it's really easy to produce misinformation. That's really convincing, right? And like it's going all over the internet now. And so I think we have a real need for automated verification of truthful information, which is a difficult thing to do. It's not easy, right? But I think the need is there because if we don't raise the bar on creating really convincing misinformation, we're going to live in a world where no one trusts anything. And, basically the entities that have the best misinformation campaigns determine what the truthful narrative is, and we kind of already live in that world.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what, I'm thinking as you're talking, how do you even use AI to combat that if there's the greatest population of stories are fake stories? What's the truth data source,
Exactly. So veering outside of AI a little bit. So what I think the solution is that, so again, in my personal capacity, I think it requires probably legislation to say information that's going out to the public has to be labeled with its intention to some degree, right? Which is never going to be a perfect process. And that's, it's never going to be a popular opinion either, right? Because there's a lot of powerful entities that want to manipulate the information that people receive, right? For persuading them to buy something or vote a certain way or whatever. And so there's that. But then when it comes to the high impact use cases, right? Information that's going to support a legal decision or medical and so on and so forth. What I think is, I don't think that AI is the right tool for that task. I think it's old school verification of information through digital signatures and maybe even logging it on a blockchain. So, I'll go a little bit further into it. The reason why I'm saying that is if you go back to say the 50s, right? And look at misinformation campaigns that were run back then by say Big Tobacco, right? But you can look that up on the internet. Big Tobacco had this whole narrative about that cigarettes are not addictive and don't cause cancer, when there was tons of evidence to the contrary, right? And they argued that in court and they kept it up for a long time. And then it was found how manipulative they were. And, you can look into the details of all that, but they were caught. But there was a high barrier to entry for them maintaining that false narrative, right? They had to spend a lot of money and it was a complicated thing. Now anybody can do that, right? And I can sit here, I can set up a script on my computer to say, okay, write 1,000 articles a day about a particular subject that are, pushing the facts this way, that are say 20% off of the truth, right? And also put names of authors in that field that never wrote that information, but they write about certain things, and then put them on websites all over the place and they get indexed, As people search for that information, they'll find those fake articles, like you said, right? I think actually what we need to have is a source of truth. So say you're an authoritative source on acquisition, you write a paper about it, you write a procedure about it, something. But maybe procedure is not the right thing. But let's say you write an academic paper for your area. You upload that paper into a repository, you sign it, with a digital signature, and it gets logged on a blockchain. And now you have an immutable copy of that. And when you make changes next time, just now, scientists and researchers, they submit for peer review and then they get put into a system, but then those papers get copied and put all over the internet and they get indexed. And now you can't really verify that's true. I think we need to build that truth base through non-AI means, but through hashing, digital signatures and stuff like that. And that's not an easy thing to achieve, right? Because now you need millions of people to participate in that, right? It would be we build up the SPAC base over time. And so, I don't have a great solution to get there, but I think something like that is probably the direction that it needs to go, to kind of verify on write rather than verify on read, just to not as a perfect solution, but to kind of raise that barrier to entry to putting a bunch of false information out there for people to have to judge on their own what's valid and what's not.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's super interesting to think about. And we had a conversation on Defense Mavericks recently about blockchain. And so what you're saying resonates a lot with me because I learned a lot in the last episode. And so, it makes a lot of sense. Before we go full GSA on you, I'm curious, kind of bridging that gap a little bit, but how important do you think it is that, and I love that you've built these things personally, right? Like that's just cool. It shows you're passionate about what you're doing, right? Like
Just a nerd,
yeah. At 5 o'clock you sign off and then you don't really sign off because you're just now jumping into building your own tool.
Well, so the misinformation thing, I plan on going like a little bit deeper into it just because I think it's so important. And there's a lot of conversations around deepfakes and stuff like that, but I don't think there's actually enough attention on I call it preemptive evidence hacking, which is not my term. It's a term from Harvard, Misinformation. They have I'm going to butcher it. I can send you a link if you want to include it.
Sure.
With but Harvard,
we can include it.
I wanted to say like Misinformation Center. They wrote a paper about the specific issue, but that's like the only thing I've seen about it. What is like kind of subtle information getting out there to sway people's opinion.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, you called yourself just a nerd, but like, how important do you think it is for our public officials, GSA, DOD, wherever that are interested in artificial intelligence or are working in that capacity in their federal employment to have that level of personal interest that you do?
That's a tough one, right? Because we need people to be interested in all sorts of things. I'm a nerd. I was always interested in computers, data science. When I got exposed to it, was like, okay, this is an area of IT that I want to go into. But I'm interested in cybersecurity and all sorts of stuff, right? Like I started as a system administrator, and so I don't think everybody needs to be interested in the same things. Like procurement, for instance, I'm barely interested in procurement. You know what I mean? I'm interested in procurement enough that I have to do my job. And it's also just interesting in how the government machine works. You know what I mean? How we fund things and stuff like that is somewhat interesting to me. But yeah, I think my opinion towards like what you should follow, it's just like personal stuff now, is like if you're pulled towards a certain subject, don't fight that. Go down that road and dive into it and learn everything you can about it, right? Like I've been interested in a lot of other things as well. Mushroom hunting and all sort of weird stuff, guitar.
Sure. No, it got me interested. Like, cause like, I'll sign off in a day and, have a personal phone call and it ends up being, an hour and a half and it's about far whatever, like, right. And like, I'm generally interested in finding ways to navigate the acquisition system. Like, I don't even know if it's on a personal level, but outside of my official capacity. And you're that way, yeah, as it pertains to tech and engineering. That's just interesting.
Exactly. I'm that way towards tech and engineering. I don't think everybody needs to be that way. It's great that there's guys like you that are interested in the FAR, Yeah.
All right, we're both nerds.
Yeah. Actually, like a million years ago when I was getting interested in going to school, I actually wanted to go to medical school because I was really interested in the like mechanics of the body. I thought it was super cool how surgeons get in there and they fix people like they fix cars. You know what I mean? But I found out, so sorry, I'm deviating a little bit now into my personal journey. But what I actually did was I thought I wanted to be involved with medicine, but then I got certified as an EMT and I went and like volunteered in the medical field. And I was like, you know what? I don't really want to be in the medical field. Like patient care was not interesting to me. I realized it's the scientific aspect. It's the like,
interesting.
Yeah. And so I have this brain that I'm interested in the way things work and picking them apart and so on. And yeah, that's what I do.
Got it. No, it makes sense.
All types. I could never be a lawyer. I don't think lawyers should necessarily retrain on data science. I'm not a supporter of that, but like there's tons of lawyers and doctors and stuff like that will pick up a little bit of data science, or machine learning AI experience, and now they're dangerous. Now they can do a lot. I totally think people should do that. But the best way to learn fast is like if you're interested in something, you go down that rabbit hole. As someone like I run this training program at GSA, and it's a great program, but that's not what's going to create that next generation of data scientists that are, Yeah,
there has to be a level of self-interest, right? Like they have to be into it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. If anything, like the goal for a program like that, in my mind, there's a lot of goals. And we're aligned with the White House AI Training Act and all of that. But the goal really is to like inspire those out of 10,000 people who take the training, if there's 100 that are like, you know what, that was really cool, and then they start their own personal journey, that's the goal.
Yeah, a little bit of inspiration. So is the COE, is the training program, they're the same thing, or are they separate?
So the COE runs the training program.
Okay.
But the training program it came about because of White House mandate called the AI Training Act from 2021. And so we've ran that program 3 years in a row. And the AI community of practice has been, the organization that executes the training program. So like we set up the relationships with Stanford for year 1 and 2, and then in year 3, which just finished on October 29th, Stanford University, Princeton, and George Washington Law School. And so we expanded it by 3x this year, did 21 sessions. It was a lot.
Wow. And so is that available to GSA or the entire federal workforce?
We're working on that right now. So the synchronous training programs open to all government employees and contractors from federal, state, local, and tribal governments. We're doing a rerun of all the sessions live. And I'm looking at my email to get you the first date of those. So December 10th is when the rerun will start. Got my dog coming in here. But yeah, so we're going to do like a second run of the recordings that people can attend those sessions. They'll get CLPs, continuous learning points. But then we're also taking all the content from all 21 sessions. We're turning it into SCORM compliant learning modules that can go into like Skillsoft and all of those platforms, GSA, OLU, OPM has one. We want to get it in, all of that. So in perpetuity, people can take these courses and get continuous learning points for them. It's really good content too. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it.
And these are focused on, I'll say like building a digital workforce. They're AI focused.
The learning objectives for the AI training series are taken right out of the AI Training Act. So there's like, I want to say 6 or 7 objectives in there. And we've built the curriculum to each session has to hit at least one of those. And most of them hit multiple. But like the acquisition track, this is targeted at the procurement workforce. It's like George Washington Law School, they have a procurement law division. And we were lucky to have the Ds there come and present. So it should all be relevant information. And we got really good feedback from the procurement workforce about, except the first session, because it was kind of like intro to acquisition, which we wanted to have in there just because we had a wide audience. We have 14,000 people that signed up for the training series. So, we wanted to make sure that we had that intro session in there for people that are not familiar, maybe just getting into government, something like that. But the rest of the sessions, they were all like tackling specific issues that are new related to procurements with AI, the legal things and so on. And then leadership and policy track, that was tailored at leadership, risks, changes, HR and employee relations as AI systems come in and stuff like that. The technical track was by far the most popular and most attended.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Stanford High, they're just like at the top of the game. These guys are awesome. Really good content. I'm learning, from watching them as well. So I think everyone's got something to gain. But the professors put it across in a way that it's not, you don't need to have a computer science degree, something to understand it,
Sure. No, that's awesome. So the COE puts out some training. And I know you and I first connected because of, I think what you called a community of practice. I think it's just an email list.
That's kind of what it is now. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and some of our plans to work together?
Sure. Yeah. So the community of practice, I got involved in the program in the summer of last year. And I saw an opportunity to really restructure the program and make it a more valuable experience for the users. Definitely the demand, the need for a space like that. But essentially, it's just an email list at the end of the day, right? We have a lot of good events and stuff, but Ryan and I came up, and you're another Ryan. So I'm talking about Ryan Dolan, right? And separately, Ryan Connell also. So that's what we're going to talk about, how our worlds kind of came together. So we were trying to create this platform that could function as a discussion forum, similar like a Stack Overflow type of thing, chat space, a place for file sharing, and just to allow in this big community that we have, people to find each other that are working on similar things so that they can create these, mini groups and help each other actually do work rather than just attend webinars and then go into their separate worlds. But building things in government is hard. We're in a limited budgetary situation. There's approvals, multi-agency. Anything you do in the interagency is difficult to do. And so we got to a certain point, but we never actually launched the platform that we had in mind. And then out of the blue, we found out, I don't remember how I found out about it actually.
We got connected for some reason. And the way that I always tell the story is you had a community practice with no platform, and I was building a platform without the people yet. And we're like, hey, maybe there's a there.
Exactly. That's exactly. And actually now I remember. So we had a small group set up for a work stream in the community practice that I was trying to get going that I called Community Products. And we had asked a couple of different folks from different agencies to come together, talk about proposing to the CIO Council to negotiate potentially terms of service at the whole of government level rather than agency by agency. And so I think that's how we got together. But it was something like that. And then, we found out that you have a platform you're building, and we have a community of 15,000 people with no platform. And so now I'm excited that we're going to use your platform for our people, or at least the pilot capacity.
I know we had a really soft VVIP launch recently within the DoD community. I think you guys are planning on the same thing on the GSA side. Went off really well on our side, had a really good turnout. But we keep kind of preaching that, and you hit it, right? We're not solving an information problem. We're solving a people and connectivity problem, and trying to put like-minded people in the same spot, for all that collaboration. And Ryan's opinion, right? I think GSA has done a really great job. You got first to market with hey, you want to buy Gen AI? Here's the template, the toolkit to use. And just, there seems like no better of an opportunity for us to collaborate at a federal, state, local. I don't really think anyone's really doing it better than anyone else. So it's we can all just work together to figure this out.
Absolutely. That's been one of the things that I've learned through being involved with community practice too, is that with generative AI, everybody's kind of on the same plane. So we have relationships with the state of California. We're talking to them. They have an AI COP out there, and they're doing a lot of great things, like creative trainings and stuff like that. Everybody's kind of moving in the same direction, which gives me hope for the future. Because, it's difficult to do anything in government with government tech for good reason, right? So that's another thing I want to touch on. A lot of folks have the impression government does things slow, private industry can come in and do it better. That's, in my opinion, and experience, not always the case, because government and industry are separate and they exist for different reasons. And security protocols and checking that procurements are fair and all of that kind of stuff is important. So that it's not a one-to-one. You say, well, these industry entities do it better. Let's have them come and do government. That I haven't witnessed that really working out well in my career. So it's really got to be a mixed approach. There's a role in government for industry, academia, government, and nonprofits. And that was the whole vision about the COP, is that we were hoping to, create a situation where we're really the conduit for connecting the different groups when it makes sense to do so in the right context. And, we're continuing to drive towards that mission. I think the Uncynic platform that, you guys are nice enough to let us piggyback on, and work together on is a good start towards that.
Yeah, appreciate that. And so you said something right before we jumped on. So I got COE. We talked about training. We talked about the community. What is it that you offer that's fee for service? I don't know that I was tracking this.
So the AI COP, which I go out and talk about the AI COP a lot, but that's a program that was funded by the American Rescue Plan, right? And it's kind of something that we did. It started out as just a grassroots effort, and then it grew, right? But the core mission of the Centers of Excellence is fee-for-service consultant for other government entities. So we're a government-to-government fee-for-service consulting service. We have 6 Centers of Excellence, or 6. Yeah. I run the data analytics and the AI Centers of Excellence, but we also have a cloud adoption center. customer experience center, contact center. And then the sixth one, I don't remember. Oh, infrastructure. That's what it is. So we have, and that's why I don't remember it, because we have cloud adoption, but there's cloud and there's infrastructure as well, which kind of one team, just like my team's technically data and AI, which are separate, but really we're one team. So yeah, we have all those centers, and then we have two practice areas, which is innovation adoption, and we'll go with one practice area. There's innovation adoption practice area as well. And yeah, so we go out and talk to agencies. We draw up an interagency agreement with the statement of work, that describes how we're going to accomplish whatever the agency needs done. And then, they pay for our services. Sometimes we do a government only. Most of the time, it's a tri-party agreement where we bring in a vendor to help the actual work. And so we have a really good acquisition shop too that helps us do our contracts, and we can get them done pretty quickly. That's one of the big benefits of doing business with us, is that we have a structure set up. Usually we can get, from agreement signature to award within 3 to 4 months, and get the teams on board. We have a BPA that we use regularly. We also do a lot of like small business set-asides or small competitions. We typically don't do large business that much, because the idea of the COE is that, agencies pay for our services. We come in at like C-suite level, and we help, so you get a couple of senior feds who come in and help you figure out what work should be done, kick it off and get the proofs of concept or whatever deliverables make sense to accomplish that work, and then after a period of a couple of years, we step away and let you run on your own. That's the idea.
Yeah, I had no idea. This is great. I didn't know that about the organization. I just had a conversation today with another DoD party that asked me this exact question, like, how can I hire someone to come help? I didn't have a great answer other than the BOA that we have in place here. But so I'm going to make sure I write this down and bring it over to her as an option.
Yeah, absolutely. Funnel people our way. I mean, that's what we exist to do. And in my opinion, the biggest benefit that our customers get working with us is that we're similar to private sector consulting, but we're different in that we're federal employees. So that it has a couple advantages. One is that like I already talked to you about like the AI Training Act and the COP stuff. So like we're working closely with the White House and, with OMB and stuff like that. And so we understand the mandates that come out. Most of us have been in the government for a long time or switched between government and industry. So we also have the technical skills, and so we have that federal perspective that you don't have to translate onto the vendor. A lot of vendors have a lot of federal knowledge and understanding as well, but it is different being on one side of the fence or the other, right? So you get that senior feds. Another advantage is that, we're kind of this neutral third party, because unfortunately, or fortunately, however you see it, none of us are getting huge bonuses by getting the big contract award, right? So, we have that neutrality to say, like, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, not just always trying to keep the work in-house,
That makes sense. Yeah.
There's been times when I said, like, it doesn't make sense for you to re-up this contract with us. Instead, run, a full and open competition award for a longer period of time, bigger dollar amount, step out of it. Because the best projects that make sense for us is where it's a relatively small amount of money and you're proving out a new capability. And, to sustain that capability long term, we set you up with a sustainment plan. Sometimes that's suggesting another GSA vehicle that can work and kind of, putting people together that can help the agency do that longer term procurement, because our agreements are typically 3 years. We can do longer or shorter ones as well. But like the ideal format is kind of those 3 years. We do one base year, 2 options. And then at the end of that, there's a sustainment plan that the agency runs with on their own. So we step out.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. All right. Well, I want to leave time to talk about, you talked a little bit about your vision. So I don't know if those are the things you hit on, or if there is something else, like if, you were crowned king for a day and you could make changes and what that looks like. And would love to just hear like what Nate's world looks like if you were in charge of it.
So if I was king for a day, I would set up a platform, right, that has, so the uncynic stuff is great. It's kind of like a social media, if you will, for government folks to come and talk about AI and procurement. I see that as one piece. I think a wider solution would be where we also have like data labs, right? So this is a place where technicians have full permission within the limited scope. So they can't go crash the system. They can't exfiltrate data, but within their little virtual box, they can do what they need to do. They can install different packages, whatever, run tests and stuff without having to go through a lengthy process to get approval to use those tools, right? Because it's a sandbox environment. You have that too. And then another component is like a model repository for government. So the people that are, doing generative AI work, you're familiar with tools like Olama or Hugging Face, that's not an endorsement for those companies, by the way. Okay. But those are repositories where, with the one command line, you can download a small model and run it on your computer, right? You can download that model. You can train a data set for fine-tuning that model to do something more specific for your task, right? And then you can publish that back up to the platform. I think something like that would help the government make fast progress. Because like if I pull down an open source model that's on the internet into my data lab, then I take this data set that I curated on GSA data, right? That can't go out public. But I fine tune that model. Now it's in my little box and say I tweak it. And now it works good for my contract purpose, right? There's translation capability for DoD or NASA or, because it's a procurement function. Maybe you need to take the instructions that I wrote on how I did it and do the same thing to prepare your own data set for fine tuning, right? But there's a proven result on that small model that I used, So if there was I call it model repository, a place where after I run that exercise and I have something working, I can publish that model file with the data card and everything up to that repository. And it's a government controlled system and anyone can go in there and, read it. And maybe for different levels of sensitivity or something like that, you have a couple different instances of walled off. You can't log in and see models of a certain thing. But over time, we can build up this repository of, basically copy and paste AI capability. It sounds like a radical idea, but it's not that radical of an idea because this is the way that, innovation in the public sector works. Or not public, sorry, the private sector. Community-driven software development is a thing that, has kind of got us to some degree, where we're at today, right? Like for the last 20 years or something like that. The big companies are doing a lot. Those big companies make these capabilities available open source. That's why open source is such a powerful concept. Because once these big companies have put a lot of money and time and things into their products, once they open source those technologies, the community they jump on it like vultures and they rip it apart and they do all sort of different things. And then that also pushes the fields forward.
Sure.
So I kind of think like this grand vision is that however it looks like for government, it's going to be different than just in the open world for obvious reasons, right? But there's got to be some open source development capability within the walls of government for government workers to leverage each other's work.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because you got me. I'll go full circle, but I talked about being an acquisition nerd, right? And like, it's pretty common that when you're defining your requirement before you're posting a solicitation or anything, you're doing a whole bunch of robust market research to figure out what already exists, and like, it almost redefines what we know of in terms, or like what we typically think of when we think of market research. But like, if what you're talking about exists or existed, like that's now step one. Like, hey, has someone already trained a data set that's relevant to me before I ask a contractor to go train a data set for me?
Exactly. It just cuts down on the time and complexity, right? It's a 10x multiplier to get things done potentially. That said,
good.
That's expensive and, for all the reasons that we're all aware of, sensitivity, budget lines, constraints, how realistic is something like that in government? I don't know. But do I think it can't be done? Absolutely not. I think it can. If folks agree that's the right path, I think there would be a lot of benefit in doing so.
Yeah. No, hey, awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate it. At time, thanks for coming on today. Appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.